Holmes was matter-of-fact as he described the theater massacre from his point of view.
You're unloading the car, you're getting stuff ready. What's going through your mind?
Just to get it done.
He faked a phone call to explain going out the exit door. Outside in his car, he calmly armed himself and suited up in body armor. Then he went back in to begin his murderous and methodical killing.
Heart pumping, adrenaline racing, no. Calm, keyed up,
Calm and collected.
Calm and collected.
He emptied his 6-round shotgun, then started firing his assault rifle.
I heard a scream.
You heard a scream?
Yeah.
Did you see anyone fall from being hit?
No.
Really?
They got down kind of behind the seats pretty fast.
You didn't see anyone actually hit by bullets or shells or shot?
I saw the one wounded guy they carried out.
The psychiatrist asked Holmes to imagine what it was like for the people in the theater, his targets.
What do people feel when they're experiencing that?
Terror, I would say.
Okay.
He called what he did a mission. How did he want to be remembered?
As mentally ill or different from the norm.
How else?
Being successful with the mission.
In July of 2012, movie lovers were excitedly waiting for the opening show of Batman: The Dark Knight Rises, and children and adults were dressed head to toe in cosplay. Nothing seemed wrong as the movie began, but with only 20 minutes into their adventure, chaos exploded. When one of those viewers arrived, armed to the teeth with enough firearms and ammo to cause some serious damage. He would tragically show no mercy to the audience, as the results were a killing of dozens and injuring of dozens more. But who was their killer, and what was his motive, and how did his backstory lead him down this horrible path? Welcome back to Something in the Shadows. My name is Tyler, and if you learned something today, please like and subscribe. Stick around to the end of the video to hear the full case of James Holmes. Let's start with, who is James Holmes? Other than a psychopath slash mass murderer, James Holmes was born December 13th, 1987 in San Diego, California. He was born to his father Robert, who was a mathematician and scientist with multiple degrees from highly touted universities, and his mother Arlene, who was a registered nurse in California. He also has one sibling, a sister. Holmes was raised in Oak Hill, which is a community in Monterey County near Castroville. At 12, he moved back to San Diego, where he lived in the affluent Rancho Penasquitos neighborhood. This is where he reportedly began to decline as far as social skills went. Holmes played football and ran cross country in high school. It is reported that he began suffering mental issues in middle school and attempted suicide at the age of 11. According to Holmes, he was frightened of what he called nail ghosts that would hammer on the walls at night. Holmes saw a social worker once before she sent him to see a psychiatrist, Lynn Fenton. Holmes was depressed and obsessed with killing for over a decade. Despite these inherent issues, Holmes actually graduated from high school in 2006 and completed a bachelor's degree at the University of California, Riverside in 2010. He pursued a grad degree in neuroscience at the University of Colorado and then moved to Aurora. Once in Colorado, he lived in a one-bedroom apartment in a building with other students involved in health studies at the University of Colorado. In his application, he described himself as quiet and easygoing, and in his dating profile, he identified as agnostic. He did leave multiple digital footprints. This includes dating sites, social media, university email addresses, and resumes on job search sites. Holmes also allegedly hired sex workers and left reviews of their service on an online message board. In October of 2011, Holmes began dating a fellow student from one of his biology classes. The relationship ended after he reportedly felt distant from him following an encounter between Holmes and another man who talked to her during a date. She stated that Holmes made bad jokes that made others feel uncomfortable and often expressed a desire to murder people. Holmes stated that their breakup contributed to his violent depression. As far as education and career goes, one could say that he was fairly successful. Holmes worked as an intern at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies, where he was assigned to write computer code for an experiment. His supervisor described him as stubborn, uncommunicative, and socially inept. Holmes wrote of his experience at Salk, saying, "I had little experience in computer programming, and the work was challenging to say the least. Nonetheless, I taught myself how to program in Flash, and then constructed a cross-temporal calibration model. Completing the project and presenting the model at the end of the internship was exhilarating." Holmes graduated from Westview High School in 2006 and attended University of California, Riverside in 2010 and received his undergraduate BS degree in neuroscience with the highest honors. He was a member of several honor societies, including Phi Beta Kappa and Golden Key. According to the recommendation letters submitted to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Holmes graduated the top 1% of his class with a 3.949 GPA. It describes him as a very effective group leader and a person who takes an active role in his education and brings a great amount of intellectual and emotional maturity into the classrooms. Holmes scored in the 98th percentile on the verbal portion, 94th percentile on the quantitative portion, and 45th percentile on the analytical portion of the graduate record examinations. In 2008, Holmes worked as a counselor at a residential summer camp in Glendale, California. This served children between the ages of 7 and 14. He was responsible for 10 kids and had no disciplinary problems. Then in 2010, Holmes worked at a pill and capsule coating factory in San Diego County. One of his coworkers said Holmes was unsociable and acted strangely at a workstation by staring at a blank wall and not verbally responding, only making a quick glance and smirking when his coworker asked if he was okay. In June of 2011, Holmes enrolled as a PhD student in neuroscience at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus. He received a grant and a stipend from different organizations. Graduate school is where the problems begin to start. Holmes would see shadows and flickers at the corner of his eyes, which would fight each other with firearms and other weapons. Holmes sought help in 2012 for his mental state at the student health clinic after he broke up with his girlfriend. Because he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, his caregivers were allowed to testify at his trial. His psychiatrist, Dr. Lynn Fenton, testified that she was worried about his homicidal idea expressed in their meeting. She saw him 7 times over the course of 3 months, twice with a male psychiatrist. Holmes rejected her ideas for treatment. She expressed her concerns about his social phobia and his psychotic level thinking, and believed he may have had schizoid personality disorder. Her listed concerns were his long-standing fantasies about killing as many people as possible, his reluctance to discuss any details about those plans, his refusal to allow them to talk to anyone else, and the unclear timeline. She didn't know if he was always that way, or if this was new. She consulted with Holmes' mother, who said he had long-standing social problems. He eventually left her treatment. In 2012, Holmes' academic performance dropped off. He scored poorly on exams in the spring. While the university was not planning on expelling him, he was in the process of withdrawing. When he withdrew from the university, 3 days after failing a key exam, he dropped out of his studies without further explanation. So it's safe to say Holmes had a rocky beginning, middle, and end. What are the details behind the Aurora movie theater shooting? Holmes' defense attorney stated that he was a psychiatric patient of the medical director of Anschutz Student Mental Health Services prior to the Aurora shooting. The prosecutors disagreed with that claim. 4 days after the release of the defense attorney's motion, the judge required the information to be blacked out. Holmes had reportedly met with 3 mental health professionals prior to the massacre. One of them, who was informed by Holmes of his homicidal thoughts, considered placing him on an involuntary mental health hold, but decided against it. Her belief was that Holmes was borderline and the commitment would only inflame him. Initial reports from the Los Angeles Times, quoting one of Holmes' classmates, indicated that Holmes was a fan of Batman and his apartment was decorated with Batman paraphernalia. However, later reports described Holmes' apartment as relatively empty while mentioning the presence of a single Batman mask. Psychiatrist William Reed, who interviewed Holmes after the massacre, said Holmes simply picked that movie because it was guaranteed to be full. According to District Attorney George B., Holmes chose the Century 16 Theater for his attack because he liked the movie theaters, and that specific theater had doors he could lock in order to increase the number of casualties, as well as being in an area where police response would take longer. He chose a midnight screening because he believed fewer children would be present. Not wanting to kill them, Holmes allegedly considered other locations for mass shootings, such as an airport, but ruled it out because it would be considered an act of terrorism. He stated, "Terrorism isn't the message. The message is, there is no message." On May 22nd of 2012, Holmes purchased a Glock 22 and then days later a Remington 870 Express tactical shotgun. On June 7th, just hours after failing an exam at the university, he purchased a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 sport rifle. All three weapons bought legally and background checks were performed. In the months prior to the shooting, Holmes purchased 3,000 rounds of ammo for the pistol, 3,000 rounds of ammo for the M&P 15, and 350 shells for the shotgun over the internet. On July 2nd, he placed an order for a Black Hawk urban assault vest, 2 magazine holders, and a knife at an online retailer. He purchased spike strips, which he later admitted he planned to use in case police would shoot at or follow him in a car chase. On June 25th, less than a month before the massacre, Holmes applied to join a gun club in Byers, Colorado. The owner called him several times to invite him to a mandatory orientation, but could only reach his answering machine. Holmes left one voicemail in reply. Due to the nature of this voicemail, which the gun club owner described as bizarre, freaky, and incoherent and rambling, he instructed his staff to inform him if Holmes ever showed up. On July 19th, just hours before the shooting started, Holmes mailed a notebook to a psychiatrist. This notebook detailed his thoughts and plans during the weeks preceding to the shooting. The notebook was found in an undelivered package in the campus mailroom. Holmes reportedly called a crisis hotline for mental health with the hopes that someone would help him out or talk him out of committing the massacre at the last minute. However, the call was disconnected after 9 seconds. Holmes then proceeded with the massacre at the Century 16 movie theater, where he killed 12 people and injured 70 others. Holmes snuck out of an exit door, propped it open, and returned with weapons and other gear, setting off several gas or smoke canisters, and then opening fire on the theater audience, killing 12 and wounding 70. Holmes was arrested without resistance while standing next to his car behind the theater moments after the shooting. According to the testimony, Holmes was initially calm and detached during the arrest, but became interested in watching the aftermath of the shooting after being placed in the back of a police car. Once Holmes arrived, he told the police that he had booby-trapped his apartment with explosive devices before heading to the theater. Police later confirmed the presence of explosives in his apartment. Holmes was found guilty on all 24 counts of first-degree murder, 140 counts of attempted first-degree murder, 1 count of possessing explosives, and a sentence enhancement of a crime of violence. On August 7th, Holmes was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, after jurors failed to unanimously agree on the death sentence. On August 26th, the judge formally sentenced Holmes to 12 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole for the murder charges, and an additional 3,318 years for the attempted murder and explosive possession charges. The judge stated that the intention of the court was that the defendant never sets foot in free society again, and that the defendant deserves no sympathy. If you learned anything from today's video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. It really helps support the channel. My name is Tyler. I hope you have a wonderful day.